I find the most difficult thing in planning and executing this course is switching from my normal way of assessing a class with 450 students to something that I think is workable for the online delivery. So I usually would have multiple choice tests for the midterm and final, and there's some options built in, and they could write optional papers. But I was pretty confident that with my multiple choice tests, I could figure out which students were studying and learning and doing better. Uh, but I can't figure out how to do multiple choice tests in a way that I could trust the student themselves are actually doing it. So I've opted, like many of us in psychology, for like short essay exams in a 3.5 hour format. But even there, I'm only allowed to design it for 90 minutes. So it is possible, I think, for a student never to read anything and just to kick the printout of my lectures, wait until they get the exam, and then do it right then without ever having done anything. And that really spooks me. Uh, so we try to like make really good questions. We try to personalize things so that we know it's this student and not another student. And I thought we worked it out pretty well. I'm very fortunate. I have 4 TAs, and there were 5 questions, and myself and each TA did one question. We went through, we scored it. We thought we did a nice job. Uh, I told them they'd have to wait a week before we would score it, and then we would post kind of what we were looking for in the answers. So that was their feedback. We didn't, on each essay, we could not write, oh, this is very good, you're missing this. There's 450 students, you can't do that. So we assumed that by showing them what we were looking for, they'd say, yes, I see where I missed points. And I think most students did say that, but literally 75 of them said, I've looked at what you said should be there and I have it all. How could you possibly? And some were really quite rude and assertive.
And they said it
Uh,
via email, urgent
via,
emails,
yeah,
that if you
oh,
didn't
always
respond right
urgent,
away, they were going to
always
die.
urgent, always urgent.
Always.
And, uh,
Yeah.
most of us, when you get an urgent email, and if you get the impression that the student's saying some kind of injustice has been perpetrated on them, I panic a little bit because I'm sure we make some errors and that yeah. So, but some of them, even when and I did even when I explain where they lose points, they just say I don't see that. That's not right, and they persist and persist and persist. And what's so hard is I get really angry and I feel like they are entitled, annoying, and what's the worst part is it I love teaching and I find it intrinsically motivating. But when this happens with each exam, I begin to hate teaching and I hate students. And kind of mitigating that and circumscribing it, putting boundaries on it. I only hate these students, and I don't really hate them. I know that they're this way because of their family upbringing and other things. But oh my gosh, the internal turbulence that now the good news is it passes when I finally figure out a system of how to get rid of these students. But here's something I'm going to hate to say, but there were 3 or 4 where I just gave them the grade at the end. I couldn't deal with it anymore. They beat me down, and I feel terrible about it. But it's a survival mechanism, uh, and I was just not going to like engage in this litigious back and forth forever. And so I feel terrible and guilty about that. But I just couldn't take it. Uh, now that's like 3. I ended up doing that. So of the original 85, I handled all but 20 pretty well with the first set. But then at the end, there was some like the bitter trio who was going to take me. They were going to take me down if they could. So I don't know if any of you have had that
I
experience,
mean,
but
I'm laughing, but you're telling a sad story of like, these are probably the people who are really dedicated and love teaching here in this, but we're all nodding and laughing because we're like, oh, that's me too. So,
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
And how do we protect ourselves against the animus and the rage and the doubts